Distinguished Speaker, Ambassador George Ward. He has extraordinary insight into U.S. relations with Germany. He was a career FSO, and as such, he knew my father. Ambassador Ward was D.C.M. in Germany from 1989 to 1992. He played a senior role in the negotiations that led to German unification. In two earlier assignments, he was Vice Consul in Hamburg and political officer in Bonn. He was later U.S. Ambassador to the Republic of Namibia. Ambassador Ward received the State Department's Distinguished Honor Award for his contributions to German unification. He has been the recipient of several other awards and medals for his civilian and military service to the U.S.
Okay, first I got to get it in the spirit. I didn't go to the Bonn American High School, and our daughter was too old to attend when we were first assigned there, but I did play softball for Bonn. And we were good. So reunions are all about memories, and it's particularly fitting that we're gathering now so close to the 25th anniversary of the fall of the Berlin Wall. It's amazing that a quarter century has gone by. For me, and I'm sure for many of you, those memories are as vivid in your minds as they were the days they were happening. It's just amazing. It's the most memorable time, certainly in my life. And in my remarks tonight, I am also going to keep in mind the guidance that I got when I gave my first high school commencement address, which was keep it short. So. First, I want to do about three things. First, I want to talk about my memories of the Bonn American High School. And there are really three that I would cite. First of all, BHSS was not just a school, it was an institution in the Bonn setting. It was a place where Germans and Americans met. It really meant something to the community. And it was a place where students whose lives were transient found permanence. And it was also a place in the midst of a great community. It was also, many of you will have noticed, a significant place of learning. I remember the late Dr. Lowell Jacobson, for example, who his passion and intensity, and he was recognized while I was in Bonn as having one of the finest schools in the entire DoD system. So there's so many memories, but three in particular. First, when we first got to Bonn, when I was D.C.M., the head of the school chorus came to see us and said, gee, our school chorus would like to perform somehow for the embassy. And I think it was probably my wife, because she gets all the good ideas in our family, who said, well, what about having holiday caroling? And so we started the first year we were there, we had holiday caroling, and as you know, Germans love to sing. And we invited mainly Germans and the Bonn American High School chorus, and they sang, and it was like the best thing we ever did. It was so good that it was the only social occasion that I can remember where we got letters immediately afterwards from German guests saying, gee, we really loved it, and please don't forget us to put us on the invitation list for next year, with that typical German candor, Don't forget us next year. And that was because of Bonn American High School chorus. The second memory has to do with Michael Jordan, basketball player. Who remembers the visit of Michael Jordan to Bonn? What I remember of the visit of Michael Jordan to Bonn was waiting for his helicopter to land. The entire school was out there. The boys were looking up into the sky like it was the second coming, waiting for that helicopter. And when he landed, pandemonium broke out. He gave me a pair of Air Jordan sneakers, which I have to this day, but I didn't have the intelligence to ask him for one thing. Would you please sign them? Which is one of the Foreign Service, we never make any money. So those were two very memorable moments. The third was memorable, but in a very different way. Many of you will remember that in the dark days of February 1991, it was dark both in terms of the season and we were at war in the Middle East. Some folks from the, folks is an expression we use these days for people that we don't really like, I guess, but the Rote Armee Fraktion lined up on the other side of the Rhine and let loose about 140 rounds of rifle fire at the embassy, hitting every story except where the ambassador and D.C.M. were. Never figured that out. What happened afterwards, apart from the fact that thankfully no one in the embassy was hurt, despite the fact that there were 75 people still in the building, the school went on to lockdown. How many of you were there then? And those were tough times because we did not know whether there might be more. And I remember going to the school, seeing we were very well protected by the German police and others, but it was pretty scary to see people there with submachine guns and armored vehicles protecting the school. I thought at the time that the students and the parents really showed bravery because it was a time of danger and a time that we did not know what would come next. Luckily, it was the only instance like that. But Bonn, didn't it seem permanent when we were there? It seemed like it would go on forever. But on November 9th, 1989, we started to realize that it wasn't permanent. That Bonn, the capital that was chosen in part because of its association with Konrad Adenauer, who lived across the river, Bonn was modest, not grandiose. It was provincial, not imperial. It was west-oriented, not eastward-leaning. And for that, in those reasons, it was the perfect provisional capital of Germany. The Bonn you lived in was like that because in 1947 we had a non-fraternization policy. And so we built everything. We built a gas station and a carpenter shop and even a power plant. We had everything. We could have been independent there. And of course that changed over the years, but it still was a complete community. But when the wall came down, everything changed. We had the good fortune, and I had the good fortune to work for him, to have an ambassador named Vernon Walters, Dick Walters, to his friends. When he hired me on April 7th, 1989, said, George, we're going to have a great time in Germany because the Berlin Wall is going to come down. Now, I won't tell you what I thought at the time of his judgment, but I really did want to be his D.C.M. But he was absolutely right. If anything, he was too candid about it. But we learned a lot quickly. We learned, for example, that Chancellor Kohl, who needed to go to Berlin right after the wall came down, was not allowed to fly there. He was in Warsaw. He was aboard a Luftwaffe aircraft. That aircraft could not fly to Berlin. We had to get at the last moment, and it happened within 5 minutes of the need. We got an aircraft to Hamburg to take him to Berlin, and it landed just 5 minutes before he needed to get on it. So we learned that we still had a role that we had to play with regard to Berlin. We also learned that the embassy was not ours. That big imposing embassy that looked like it was made out of stone and was really made out of wood, that was ours for $1 a year until 90 days after another city in Germany was declared as the permanent capital. We sort of dusted off that contract and said, well, gee, there were some Germans in 1947 or so who were really wise. So that lent a sense of urgency to what we were about. And Dick Imus, the late Dick Imus, who was our economic minister at the time, and some others drew up a plan called Mission 2000. We did it before Berlin was declared as the capital, and it was the plan for moving to Berlin. And then we had to negotiate with US, Britain, France, and the two Germanys at the time in the USSR, the 2+4 agreements. At the beginning, it seemed that there was less enthusiasm than worry about German unification. At times it seemed that only the United States among the Allied governments was unreservedly happy about the prospect of German unification. The UK, France, and certainly the Soviet Union had a lot of reservations. It turned out that the primary task was to find a graceful way out for Mikhail Gorbachev and the Soviet Union, to find a path out of Germany into a new role. And in that process, George H.W. Bush, James Baker, Helmut Kohl, Horst Telchik, and others formed bonds that were the best symbol I can think of the enduring nature of U.S.-German ties. They worked together day by day, minute issue by minute issue, to figure out a way to make all this happen. And they were successful. We changed our role in a period of 1 year from occupiers, which we were still legally, to guests. At the beginning, it was tough. There were some folks in the German Foreign Ministry who thought that, well, after unification, the relationship to NATO might have to change. Maybe even East Germany, the eastern part, would be under different rules from the western part. All of that got ironed out. Germany remained in NATO. Germany was truly unified. East Germany and West Germany took a long time, but became one nation. Those agreements were negotiated in a matter of weeks, which, when we think of some of the negotiations that are now taking years, is truly remarkable. The bottom line is we got everything done on time. Germany was unified on October 3rd, 1990. And the habits, and that happened because the cooperation that we learned over the 45 years during the time you were there were lessons well learned. I just want to close with one story that encapsulates for me German unification and the period we lived through. My maternal grandmother emigrated from a small town in Sachsen-Anhalt in 1902. She was 18, she was the 13th in the family of 13 children. So her family was divided by east and west. Her hometown and the closest relatives were in East Germany, and I never met them until the wall came down. It turned out when I met them that the family had really suffered. They were workers, not executives in East Germany. They weren't party members, so they didn't do too well. In 1991, my mom came to visit us in Bonn, as she did just about every year. And I decided I would bring our relatives from near Halle in Sachsen-Anhalt to Bonn. And they arrived at the train station with their luggage in plastic bags, the little plastic bags that you got when you went shopping. And they came to the house that we used to call Tara on the Rhine, and they didn't quite understand why anyone would have that kind of room. Their apartment, you could reach from the living room to the dining room in one. One evening, we were walking along the Rhine with my mom and my second cousins, and looking at the lights along the Rhine that you'll remember, and the Rhine Schiffe, and the music that we all remember. And my East German cousin began to weep. He was weeping because he said all along they told us that the West was just like the East. We never dreamed of this. And that dream was Bonn, that small town in Germany that kept alive the flame of freedom for decades. The small town in Germany that was beloved by those who lived there. The small town in Germany that played a role in history that I hope won't be forgotten. So thank you very much.